is the Bearcast, presented by Bird Culture Ford. Bird Culture Ford has been in Waco since 1936. Ford is the #1 selling truck in Texas 43 years running. The Bearcast is also presented by WellMed Medical Management and USMD Health System Dallas. Here's Craig Smoke and Grayson Grundhafer.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into a brand new edition of the Bearcast on Sic'Em365.com. I'm Craig Smoke, Sic'Em365 radio host, also writer, joined as always by Grayson Grundhafer, director of broadcasting, also team and recruiting reporter for Sic'Em365. And we join you on a day where there's brand new news on Dave Miranda's contract. A new extension has been officially signed and announced by the school. A new contract that will carry him through 2029. Of course, there's nothing that locks him into this necessarily to 2029, but it is something that we've been waiting on, and we're going to dive into this and the press release and all of that. But that news is now official, and it's something we've been waiting on. So, Grayson, how are we doing this week, especially in light of some news that has been a long time coming now?
I mean, this is massive news. This is the contract extension that everyone thought wasn't going to happen. A lot of people were very pessimistic about this, and I think it was pretty apparent from the moment that he basically turned down all of those jobs, said he wasn't going anywhere, said they were working on a new contract, at least Mac did. I mean, all signs pointed to this, and it finally happened. And I think for Baylor fans, this is really, really exciting stuff because I think everyone saw what Dave Miranda's potential is this past season and kind of got to see the beginning of things, right? I mean, it's only year 2. I mean, there's a lot left in store with Dave Miranda in this program, and I think it's only the beginning, and this is a first step in the right direction. And I will say, congrats to Mac Rhodes getting this done. I mean, this is a huge deal. There were some massive jobs that opened up this year. I mean, we're talking about Notre Dame, USC, LSU. I mean, there were big, big jobs, and Mac Rhodes was able to keep Dave Miranda in Waco. It's huge.
Yep, so Baylor with an official announcement today. Baylor-Miranda finalized contract extension. Mac Rhodes announced on Tuesday the new deal results in an extension through 2029. And, of course, Baylor does not disclose financial terms since they are a private institution. But I'm sure there's plenty of people already speculating on the dollar figure, and I'd imagine it's a high one because even though they don't disclose, it's not because they're afraid of the numbers. I can guarantee you that. Mac Rhodes said in the release, "I'm incredibly grateful for Dave's outstanding leadership of our football program and student athletes through his commitment to preparing champions for life. Dave has brought unprecedented success to our football program, both on and off the field. He has brought tremendous national exposure and acclaim to our institution and the greater Waco community. We look forward to the future with Dave, his wife, Dion, and their children, and the continued growth of our football program, student athletes, and fan support under his exceptional leadership. Dave is without question one of the most brilliant minds in college football across the country." And Miranda with a very short, sweet quote in the press release as well. "My family and I are truly appreciative of the tremendous support we have received from Mac, President Livingstone, and the entire Waco community. We are both incredibly grateful and proud to call Baylor our home. I look forward to continuing the work we started on and off the field in the years to come." There's also a comment from Dr. Linda Livingstone, and there's a big rundown of all the things they've accomplished over the last couple of years. 99% of that primarily coming in the last year when you think of all Big 12 selections and the titles they won and all of that. A lot of that done in year number 2. And a lot of, big accolades for individual players as well. Most of those coming in year 2, if not all of them. So Dave Miranda officially locked down with Baylor contract-wise through 2029. And for the first sour puss that wants to be like, well, it doesn't mean, and I know I kind of referred to it earlier, it doesn't mean that he is chained down to Waco until 2029. But, man, if somebody does come calling and there's another carousel like there was this last offseason where you really did have to bite your fingernails a bit because after all the success that they had, there was job after job after job opening up and people desperate to hire the next big thing. And certainly he's like right there at the front of the line in terms of next big things. It doesn't, tie him down, unable to go anywhere else. But, man, it sure does, show his intentions, and it also makes it a lot more difficult. And the buyout, I would imagine, is pretty great if somebody does want to come calling. So this is also about Baylor securing themselves. And, both parties got what they wanted, because I had imagined with all of the talk and all the time it took to finalize this, Miranda was also looking out for his assistant coaches in some ways. And so T's crossed, I's dotted, and really this has been done for about 3 weeks. If you were listening to our radio show, then you know that this has been pretty much a done deal for a while now, and they were just, for whatever reason, waiting on the right announcement time. Well, that right announcement time was today. So through 2029, Dave Miranda's contract extension.
Yeah, and of course, I looked on the Sic'Em 365 board, and someone already posted about Matt Rule signing his extension and saying, I don't trust extensions. I mean, listen.
Do you enjoy anything? Like, if you have to just poo-poo on every little thing?
The day of. I mean, this is such a big deal. And, I mean, I know that people are
lighten up. Jesus.
Everyone's so pessimistic about it just because of the way the whole Rule thing went down. But, like, I don't know. I just think enjoy the moment, right? I mean, Dave Miranda's locked in. This is a team that has a ceiling next year of potentially making the college football playoff. I mean, it is absolutely realistic. They could go back and win the Big 12 again in what is kind of honestly a shaky year for the Big 12 going into next season with the coaching changes and just the loss of quarterbacks in the league. I mean, Baylor has a real opportunity to be even better next year than they were this year. And so getting Miranda solidified, locked in, and really just kind of giving him what he earned over this past season is awesome. And now it's all about, the football ops facility, that getting done, and really just trying to continue to bolster this program and making it one of the best in the entire country. And of course, as they, kind of plan for the new Big 12 as well, it's big to have a coach that you kind of see as the guy for the future that can carry you into that transition and carry you into national relevancy, honestly.
Yep. So press releases out there if anybody's interested in checking out that. I mean, you're not going to find much in the way of details, but there was one interesting note that came out of the contract press release announcement, and that's that Baylor has found their opponent. Again, if you listen to the radio show, Sic'Em 365 radio, then you heard Mack Rhodes last week, or if you read my recaps, you read this last week, that they had found their replacement opponent for Louisiana Tech and their upcoming season opener. They had mutually decided to cancel that game. La Tech replaced Baylor with Missouri, and Baylor was searching for an opponent. Mack Rhodes let it be known it was going to be an FCS school from outside the state of Texas. In the future, they'd like to stay closer to home, but they liked this because they didn't really want to have to go to Ruston next year. They wanted an extra home game, so they got that. And it's not, the ideal team that you would have picked if you had your full array of choices, but when you're trying to schedule a game, 6 months before it starts, then you're kind of limited. And today we learned within the press release for Dave Miranda, we see the new opponent now official as well, and it will be Albany coming down to Waco on September the 3rd. Playing at McLean Stadium to open the 2022 season. That will be Baylor's kickoff before then traveling to Provo, Utah in week number 2 to play BYU in a big premier non-conference matchup and a future Big 12 preview as well. And then Texas State will close out their non-conference at home. But Albany, would not have guessed them. Maybe if you gave me 100 tries, I would have eventually got to Albany, but maybe not even if you would have given me 100 tries. I might have named like 90 Texas schools and then 10 others that came to mind, but it will be Albany. I don't know much about them. I'll just tell you that if Baylor doesn't win by 3 touchdowns, something went wrong.
Yeah, a lot more than that. They need to win by a lot more than 3 touchdowns. This team went 2-9 last year. Started the season 0-8 before finishing the year 2-3, winning 2 out of their last 3. This is not a very good team. Just to put in perspective, they lost to Syracuse this year, 62-24. I think Baylor is significantly better than Syracuse. Now, Albany may be better next year than they were this past season. That's also could be true, but this should be a pretty easy win for Baylor to start 1-0. And, based on what Mack Rhodes said, I think that's kind of what they were looking for, to be honest. I mean, they wanted kind of a tune-up game before they went and played BYU, so I don't think they were looking for a really tough test to start the season. They wanted to play an FCS team. This team was available. They didn't have a lot of options. Went out, got Albany. I think they should win that game pretty easily, and that would lead you into that big matchup, like you said, against BYU. But it is noteworthy because that's who they're starting the year with.
Yeah, so Albany will be who you are showing up to see in week number 1 at McLean Stadium next year. And for folks who want to just show up and get blitzed or see friends and just see a blowout, well, this should fit that bill. Yeah. I mean, this is kind of what you want in an opening game, to be perfectly honest with you. If you're not going to go the big main event Saturday night prime time versus like some other big juggernaut, I mean, the other option really is to just go play somebody you're going to beat up and move on to the next one. And it's clear that they have a lot of focus on that BYU road trip. They mentioned that quite a bit, and obviously the schedule change as well. So they're going to be locked in for that one, I would imagine. But, yeah, so two big pieces of news today. Albany will be the season opener, and Dave Miranda contract extension through 2029. So what do you think having this out there, that news about the contract now does, or not changes, but does it, for any of the recruits who may have been a little bit on the fence as far as like, not for sure how long he'd be around, or even, and I'm sure before this was signed, there's probably some staffs, I can think of a couple right now that were probably at times the last few months, like, saying things here and there, but it's going to be hard to say, well, he's not going to be there when, this just got signed. But for any recruits that were interested in Baylor, how much more, if at all, does this, tempt them in terms of, looking at the Bears and possibly heading to Waco?
Yeah, I think this past off season when Dave Miranda basically said that he wasn't going anywhere, I think that really was the first part of this, right? Because it allowed them to solidify the 2022 class. And then I think the 2023 guys were also kind of like, okay, he's going to be there at least through this year. And really that's all you can officially know when someone just says something like that and when they didn't take another job elsewhere. But now you're looking at it through the lens of future, right? What's the impact going through 2029 is what's that going to look like? And I think for recruits, when they see contract extension and see, oh, this guy's committed to being at Baylor for this amount of time, I think it does resonate really, really well on the recruiting trail. So, yeah, I think you could see a little bit of a tick up for the Baylor recruiting effort. I don't think it's going to be something crazy. I think really the end goal is just to win more games, right? So if they come out in 2022, continue to win games, Dave Miranda continues to say all the right things about him staying at Baylor, being committed to Baylor, and continues to stay with the contract. I just think, again, like I said, the sky's the limit kind of for what they're trying to build. And I think they've already gotten that started with the 2023 class, and I think that's going to continue to go forward.
So there you go. Pretty big news, and news we had been waiting on for quite some time. And thankfully that will end any questions about, the contract and why is it taking so long and all of those things that have been out there for the last few weeks now. It's all done. So questions answered, and it's on to the next thing. And the next thing to worry about really is just spring football. And we do have dates for that now, Grayson. We got a pro day date, and we kind of have a better idea of how this offseason is going to go now. The Green and Gold game will be on April the 23rd at McLean Stadium. Kickoff has not been announced for that one, but plenty of time, obviously, to announce that kickoff date. But April 23rd, a Saturday, that will be the Green and Gold game, and we'll wrap up Baylor's 15 spring practices. And also, they announced that March 30th, so about almost a month or 3 weeks before, they will have their pro day. So coming up here in about 6 weeks. 6 weeks, it seems like forever away, but it'll be here in a flash, I'm sure. 6 weeks is when we will see NFL teams converge on Waco, and I feel confident in saying that they will, to see the batch of Baylor prospects who just wrapped up, in many cases, all-star games a week to two ago. So, yeah, that'll be our opportunity to see Jalen Petrie and Kalen Barnes and Treston Ebner and, Tyquan Thornton and the whole cast of characters. 7 of them invited to the Combine. The only one not invited that was a part of an all-star game was Xavier Newman-Johnson, but he'll be out pro day. And then, guys, I'm sure Riley Tejada will be amongst the crew of guys out there, and some random UMHB dude will be out there, and some dude from, like, Laterno will be randomly running out there. But, yeah, pro day and spring practice, or spring game, also announced, so we now have that to put down on our calendars.
Yeah, and it also said that mid-March is when spring practices will officially begin, the 15 practices. So, I mean, we're basically right at a month away, I would say, from spring football officially beginning. So, a lot to look forward to. I think all of those events are a lot of fun. I'm extremely excited about spring football. And of course, the Pro Day will actually be a really interesting one this year. And hopefully we get to see some crazy times with Kalen Barnes and Tyquan Thornton. I think those times could be really, really cool to watch. You know, we haven't seen anyone go in there and blister really since like Corey Coleman did it, or maybe KD, I guess, after him. But yeah, since that time, no one's really gone in there and impressed anyone with their speed at all, to be honest. So I'm really excited to see that group go in there and perform.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, I don't even know if it's 3 years ago now, whenever James Lynch, that pro day, that was one of the better attended they'd had in some time, in probably a couple of years, because obviously, like, who were the prospects that were coming out during that whole tumultuous time period, you know?
Mims didn't run at that, right? Wasn't that the thing? I don't think he ran
I
because
don't
he
remember,
ran so well at the combine.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I don't think he did. Just
Yeah.
based on my little quick recollection of it, I don't think that he did, looking back on it. But, yeah, I mean, he had generated some buzz. But, I mean, the biggest one I've seen, and I was here like 2 years after RG3, and everybody always talks about the RG3, satellite trucks in the parking lot, and NFL Network and all of that. Kind of hard to imagine that that's going to be that way anytime soon, because, like, I think just broadcasts have changed. Like, I don't know, just like the satellite truck live at a dude's pro day. I don't know how often we're still going to see. You know what I'm saying?
You have to have. It's got to be a quarterback, and it's got to be a top pick.
That was Heisman in a small school, so it made it even more unique. And I just think that was kind of a
like Trevor Lawrence had that. And Zach Wilson had that, but it's pretty much always a quarterback, and it's pretty much always like a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
And Baylor doesn't have that this year. They just have a lot of guys who are going to get drafted, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so I still assume there will be I would think all 32 teams will probably be down here just because they have such an eclectic mix and a number of guys. I mean, there's, 8 guys that we can name that played in all-star games, and then, there's your Raleigh Tejadas and I mean, whoever else is going to be working out as well. So, yeah, I would expect it to be very well attended and be one of the ones in the last handful of years to actually look forward to, because there have been some pretty forgettable ones or some pretty lightly attended ones over the years. But this should be a good one, no doubt about it. So, yeah, I got spring game announced. You can kind of figure around March 15th or so is probably when they'll start spring practices. They want to start right on March 15th for my birthday. That'd be great. Got the green and gold game announced and Miranda's contract announced. And is there anything else football that we're not touching on, although that's a pretty jam-packed last few days for them?
Yeah, a lot of information. But, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We got most of it done. We talked about the Senior Bowl last week. But, yeah, I think that's pretty much where we're at right now. But a lot of just kind of news nuggets. And, of course, the Dave Miranda one is the headliner.
Yeah, I mean, that is. It's been a long time coming, even though it's only been really a few weeks. But, I mean, Mack Rhodes had talked about that during the season last year. And then, at times off and on with us, including, I think the last time he was on with us, or maybe the time before, he had said, it's coming. But, when you hear that a couple times, you're just like, all right, well, now I just want to know. And so now it's good that it's out there. Meanwhile, in basketball, Baylor men, what a fun and depressing Saturday they had this past weekend. It's always fun to beat Texas, and it was great to see them beat Texas once again, and not only beat Texas, but do it convincingly and do it very one-sided. 80-63, your final score. Adam Flagler with 20 points. Flo Thamba had a nice game. I mean, really, the whole team had a pretty nice showing, but, I mean, the game was marred. The game was marred by what happened injury-wise as Jonathan Tchamwa suffered a season-ending knee injury, collapsed down on the court, running down the court, and you could tell right away it was not going to be good. You could tell he was in a lot of pain, and you could tell by, even just the response from the opposing team, that this was not a good deal. Chris Beard, very thoughtful in his comments about JTT in the postgame before we really knew what had happened, but everybody kind of figured the worst, and it was, in fact, the worst, Grayson. Season-ending knee injury for JTT, and so the Bears will be playing without him for the rest of the way, and this obviously is a big development and is something that definitely changes their trajectory. You just wonder how much.
Yeah, and it's really sad because he had just come off a career game against Kansas State. He had a career high 21 points, 6 rebounds, 9 of 10 from the floor. Just played outstanding. And you saw in that game, you really started to see him start to flourish, especially in the pick and roll. He was finishing so well, even hit a 3 late in that game. And then he comes back in this Texas game, and that injury happens. And this team, they can't catch a break injury-wise. I mean, you're talking about Langston Love to begin the year. You had Adam Flagler missing a couple games early in the season, so it took him a while to get in a groove. LJ Cryer most recently. Jeremy Sohan missed some games with the ankle injury. I mean, can they catch a break? And so far they haven't. And so now they're going to have to adjust the lineups. They're going to have to figure out a way to get creative. I think one headline coming out of the Texas game is how well Flo Thamba played. One of the best games he's played of his entire career, and he's going to have to play extremely well. But I do think in certain matchups, they are going to have to rely on probably Jeremy Sohan to play the 5. And I think that's just the reality of it. I think this team now becomes more of a try to outscore you type of team when they play the better teams in the country. I think they're going to have to figure out ways to outscore teams, because I do think they're going to have problems defensively without Everyday John, who we know is just such a versatile defender because of his ability to switch on pick and rolls. He can guard guards, and Flo at times can do that, but he's very inconsistent and not nearly the level of defender on the perimeter that EJ is. So it's a big loss. I'm definitely not going to say that it's not, but I will say if they can get LJ Cryer back and he comes back and he's 100%, I still think they can score with every single team in the country. Problem is this first game, they're going up against one of the best defenses in the country in Texas Tech on the road tomorrow. That's going to be a really, really big game, and probably one that they shouldn't win, which makes it really intriguing, because if they're able to go in there and get a win like that, it definitely gives them a chance to win the Big 12. If they lose that game, the outlook becomes a little bit more bleak, but luckily for the Bears, Kansas did drop one this week, and Texas Tech dropped one as well. So they are still definitely in the hunt.
Yeah, I mean, they're squarely in the hunt, number 2 team in the Big 12 right now, but it does change the outlook quite a bit when you're suddenly factoring in no Jonathan Tchamwa-Tchatchoua. So, yeah, I think you're right. We had Kendall Cowd on. We had who else do we have on talking basketball? Jason King on talking basketball, and they were all, giving their thoughts on kind of how this works, and, Sohan playing some at the 5 and all of that. So, yeah, as it stands right now, Baylor 1 game back of Kansas. Then you've got Tech 1 game back of Baylor, and Texas 1 game back of Tech. So 3 games separating number 1 and number 4 in the Big 12 right now.
Yeah, I do think that this is still a 3-team race, though. Texas has played well in stretches, but I don't think they can lose again if they want any shot at winning the Big 12. I don't see Kansas losing more than 3 times. Honestly, I don't even see them losing 3 times. I actually think the winner of the conference is probably going to finish 14-4. Which makes the margin for error very, very slim. And that's why this is, again, we talked about must-wins. This isn't a must-win for Baylor because they can still win out. And they have Kansas on the schedule. And if you look at their schedule, you see, TCU, Oklahoma State, Iowa State still on the schedule. Those are 3 very winnable games. So the Bears still have a shot to win this conference, but they're going to need some help, and they're going to have to win some of these games that maybe they're not supposed to win, like this game at Tech or the game at Texas. And then, of course, they're going to have to beat Kansas if they want any chance of winning this conference. It's going to be a really interesting race. And I do think that Tech, Baylor, and Kansas also have a shot. Obviously, Kansas definitely the favorite at this point.
Yeah, you'd have to think so. And that's asking a lot of Baylor, fresh off this injury, beating Texas, beating Tech, first of all, just beating Tech, starting now, going out to Lubbock, and they'll be fired up, and we'll have a big crowd, I'm sure, and, ready to bring the noise and bring that home court atmosphere like they did for, UT and like they did for, any others that walked through there. They're already camping out. I saw that yesterday. I don't know if that's really necessary, quite frankly, but it's what they love to do. So there will be some interest, no doubt, in a big crowd.
Yeah, I will say, I'm looking at Kansas's schedule right now, and I don't know that Baylor can. I don't know if Baylor can catch them, to be honest. I mean, they got West Virginia, Kansas State, then the Baylor game, which, like I said, if Baylor wants to win the conference, they have to win that game. They have to beat Kansas. Then they have TCU twice, and then Texas in Allen Fieldhouse, which Texas has been terrible on the road. So yeah, I really only see, I mean, at most Kansas is losing twice, but it looks like they may go 15-3 again, which we've talked about that in recent years. That's become more commonplace with Baylor and Kansas being so good over the last 3 years. But prior to that, 15-3 was like an anomaly in this conference. But yeah, it looks like Kansas is well on their way to possibly doing that, or at least going 14-4, which again makes tomorrow night's game for Baylor one that they really got to figure out a way to win if they want to win the Big 12 again.
Yep, so Baylor in Lubbock tomorrow night against number 11 Tech. Then it'll be home against TCU on Saturday. And then 2 more weeks to go after that with a couple of games in each of the following weeks before the Big 12 tournament play starts. It'll be at OSU, Kansas at home, at Texas, and then Iowa State at home. But yeah, this week at Tech and then TCU at home. So that's what's coming up for the Baylor men. And best wishes to Jonathan Tchamwa-Tchatchoua. Just really hated to see that. Getting so tired of the injuries, man. It really is ridiculous how they've been hit over and over and over again. And, you know, that just shows you the very frail line that you walk when trying to win championships. You know, last year they were able to win one in part because they could stay healthy. And, you know, they lost, you know, if they lost JTT last year, like they probably don't win a title, you know what I mean? Or any number of guys. And, you know, this year, maybe they're able to overcome it, but it does show you, like last year, everything just came together perfectly for them, and they were able to stay healthy and stay confident and stay loose and just, you know, stay focused and get the job done. So, yeah, they're going to be up for a bit of a tougher task this time around.
Yeah, and I don't like giving other schools in the Big 12 much credit, but watching this season and just seeing, like you said, how thin that line is, it really is impressive to see what Kansas has done over the years, just because they've had years like this and somehow they still win the Big 12. You know what I mean? Like even this year, they didn't even look like a very good team midway through the season, and they're still...
There's been a couple of games here recently where you're like, it's very favorable. Like there's kind of times where things break their way, but they force things to break their way. They force it to happen. Yeah,
it's like how they're able to just figure out a way to win these games. And you look up the Big 12 standings and the rest of their schedule, and you're like, they're gonna win the conference again, or at least have a share of it, most likely. And so
I think Baylor needs to focus on the tournament.
I mean,
yeah, like the regular season title's cool, but I'd rather see them win the Big 12 tournament than the regular season almost, because they haven't done it before. It'd be kind of a nice thing to do.
I'd rather see them win the national championship. But
yeah, I mean, but I'm saying before we get to that point, you got, I mean, the regular season title. I mean, if you win tomorrow night, we can have this conversation and have it a lot more serious, but I'm not really very hopeful about tomorrow night, to be perfectly honest with you.
And I don't blame you for that.
Yeah.
Even though I think they would need LJ to be nearly 100% for them to win that game. And we'll see what happens. Again, my thought process was just like, how in the world do I keep looking up the Big 12 standings every year except for last year? And Kansas is just sitting there every single year, despite injuries, despite things breaking the wrong way for them sometimes. But this year it's all fallen in place, and they just continue to win all these close games. And it's frustrating. They did drop one to Texas, but Baylor's going to need them to get upset probably if they want to try to get a share of the Big 12 championship this year.
Yep, so that's the deal with the men. We'll see what happens in Lubbock on Wednesday night. And again, best wishes to JTT. And then for the women, they have kept their winning ways going. Now 4 wins in a row after dropping that 1-point heartbreaker to Oklahoma. And that one even stings a little bit more when you really look at what they could be doing right now. They could be in the midst of a real good winning streak. Before, not going to complain too much about that, especially when it kicked off with back-to-back wins over Texas, which were 2 top 15 wins. Come out, beat the mess out of Kansas State. Their big scorer, whose name's escaping me right now, who's had
Yoka Lee.
Yeah, didn't do. I mean, there was nothing to write home about there. And then West Virginia, nearly a 20-point victory over the Mountaineers, 75-57 this past Saturday. They have a game coming up on Wednesday as well. They're actually going to end up playing TCU back-to-back games. So TCU in Waco on Wednesday night, and then TCU in Fort Worth on Saturday. And then they've got their own, couple weeks still left remaining with a couple of road trips, including their next to last game in Ames, which will be a big one because Iowa State's the top team in the conference right now. But they're winning, and they're staying right there in the thick of things in the Big 12 race. So, yeah, pair with TCU coming up this week, starting in Waco on Wednesday night for Nikki Collin and the Baylor women.
Yeah, they've won 9 of their last 10, and I mentioned this kind of after that stretch with the Oklahoma and the doubleheader against Texas. Their schedule really opens up, and opposite of the men, you look at their schedule and you go, my goodness, they got 2 games against TCU, who's currently 2-10 in the conference. Then you play Oklahoma State, who's currently 3-10 in the conference. All 3 of those games should absolutely be wins, like by 20. All 3 of them, they should not be very close. Baylor should win those games with ease. Then you have Kansas at home, and Kansas is actually quietly sneaking up the Big 12 standings. They're 8-4, and they're currently in sole possession of 4th place in the conference. So that'll be a big one. And then the at Iowa State game, obviously, before finishing up with Texas Tech, who is also 2-10 in the conference. So, I mean, you look at this final stretch, they should easily win 4 games. And then it's just a matter of, can they flip one of those other 2 games? And if they go 5-1 to finish the year, I think they got a really good shot at getting at least a share of the Big 12 championship.
Yep, so things going pretty well for them right now. Certainly a nice change from the beginning of the year when they were struggling a little bit out of the gates and just different and new, and then COVID pause and all that stuff. And they've seemed to have found like a little bit of a groove for themselves. So that's been good to see. And let's see if they can't keep it up. And man, you imagine if Nikki Collin wins the Big 12 somehow in year 1. Like, I mean, I don't think that would be out of the realm of possibility, but I think that'd just be a really cool deal if you had rewound to a couple months ago and said, like, okay, just wait, she's going to win the Big 12. And I know that she's got to go do it, but I'm just saying it would be cool to see that accomplishment, but they still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and honestly, this is a big week because next week we could be talking and Baylor could be in sole possession of 1st place in the Big 12 because Iowa State travels to Texas and then they get Oklahoma in Ames. So if Iowa State goes 1-1 this week and they beat Oklahoma, Baylor could be sitting there in 1st place. I mean, this is really interesting. Iowa State still has to travel to Kansas. They still got to play Baylor as well. So Iowa State has the toughest schedule coming up. Oklahoma with an easier schedule, and Baylor probably with the easiest schedule remaining. So definitely, I mean, it's a chance. And what if she does that in year 1? I mean, wow. And possibly they probably get a top 2 seed as well.
I mean, I would say, on one hand, if they were able to do it, and not trying to get too far ahead here, but it would be like, well, yeah, that's what she's supposed to do.
Expectations, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I also do think, because they have been playing with a very small roster and they've had the COVID pause and all that, I think it'd be a big deal. I think it'd be a really big deal for her to come in and win it in year number 1. So it's out there for the taking. They got to go and do it with 6 regular season games to go. And again, 2 versus TCU this week. So news-wise, I think that's pretty much it. You want to go ahead and get in the mailbag here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Scotty B, the Baylor King, the king of asking about things that are not football, for sure. Scotty loves the non-revenue sports. He's a non-revenue king. What should Baylor baseball's expectations with hosting Maryland, who was an NCAA tournament team last year? Opening series. Okay, that I'm reading this correctly, but what should their expectations be, baseball against Maryland in the opening season series?
Yeah, I think they should win the series, right? I mean, that to me is the expectation. It's at home in Waco. Figure out a way to go win that first series of the season. Now, Maryland was solid. Like you mentioned, they went 30-18 last year. They made the NCAA tournament. They finished 2nd in the Big Ten behind Nebraska. So they're a good team. But this Baylor baseball team's good enough to win 2 out of 3. And I think they should win 2 out of 3 this year. They have a solid team. They can still go out and try to win a championship with the talent on the roster. And so, yeah, I think that's the ultimate goal, right? It's just to win 2 out of 3. I'm not saying that they need to win a game dominantly or go out and win a game 15-2 or really demolish Maryland. It's just about getting the season started off strong. And that's what I want to see from this Baylor team. And I think they have the potential to do that. And I think that should be the expectation.
Scotty also asks, what did you do for Valentine's Day for your wife, Grayson? He says, I don't have a girlfriend or anything, but I did enjoy my birthday. Well, happy birthday, Scotty. Anyways, I gave a shout-out to you all on the podcast and the crowd for men's tennis on Saturday, which was a record number at the match against Virginia. And, yeah, the Baylor men's tennis team just keeps on chugging along, and they are getting a little bit of support, which is good to see as well. But what did you and the wife do for Valentine's Day?
Yeah, so I actually got really cute this year. I went out and got her a few of her favorite things from around Austin. So I got her favorite coffee, like matcha, got her favorite cookie in the area, just a couple little of her favorite things, flowers, of course, a card. And then we cooked her lasagna that she's always made growing up. We cooked it together and then had a bottle of rosé and just hung out. It was really nice. Just at home. We thought about going out, but we had just gotten back from a trip to Utah. So we just decided to stay in and just cook and have a good time together. It was a lot of fun, honestly.
Good deal. Stat Boy, will Texas ever beat Baylor in basketball? Well,
I mean, they're going to have a chance to at the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
The second to last game of the year, they're going to get to play Baylor in Austin, and that's going to be a really interesting game because Texas is a completely different team at home than they are away. So Baylor's going to have to play really well, but yeah, it's going to be a minute, isn't it? Texas just, I don't know what's up with them, but they're just not very consistent, and Baylor's really had their number over the years, especially the women's.
I think their women's coach is a little bit of a loose cannon in his little rivalry with the Tech coach. It's just all kind of strange. If that was Kim Mulkey, by the way, like, I don't know. I just feel like if she was having her like a little beef with the Tech coach, I'd hear a lot more about that than I'm hearing about Vic Schaefer in Texas. I see little things on Twitter, but I don't really read much about it outside of that. And it all seems, I don't know, just sort of weird. Their little rivalry they have over whatever it's over. I have no idea. I just know they keep getting arguments about stuff. But Vic Schaefer, was hired to come be the big ace in the hole to counteract Kim Mulkey. And then, Mulkey leaves, especially you think, oh, wow, they're just going to kill it. And they've been pretty much the same team they've always been this year. And if anything, you've seen teams like Iowa State jump up and get into the mix. And, and then the men's side of things, Scott Drew's just been dominant against Texas. And obviously the Baylor women have as well. So that was good to see Nikki Collin continue that on. But, yeah, enjoy it while you can because that stuff doesn't necessarily last forever. And right now, it's been pretty good for both programs for quite a while. Bear Coog, which Baylor ex-receivers, if any, does Cordell Russell resemble the most? Curious about what actually led to his decommitment. Most likely his Tech buddies or the appearance of Dallas Baker.
Yeah, I mean...
Who's Cordell Russell?
Yeah, so he's the North Mesquite wide receiver that they offered this past week. So Baylor offered him. He's a wide receiver, about 6'3", 190 pounds. I don't really have a great comp for him. I really like his game. I think he's a really explosive wide receiver. He's a 4-star. If Baylor is able to land him, I'll probably dive deeper into trying to compare him to an ex-Baylor wide receiver. But he's a thick-bodied, 6'3", runs routes pretty well, fast downfield. Baylor had been looking at him for a long time, just hadn't offered. I mean, I remember at the camp back in March of last year, they were looking at him, trying to figure out if they were going to offer him, and just never did. He committed to TCU back in November and then decommitted 2 days after Baylor offered. Now, Baylor's definitely a player in his recruitment, but so is Texas Tech. He has a lot of friends at Texas Tech. I know Brendan Jordan, a recent Tech commit, he's good friends with him. They play on the same 7-on-7 team. Texas Tech's quarterback commit, Jake Strong, is close friends with Cordell Russell. They play on the same 7-on-7 team. So, a lot of trends going in that direction. But what I will say is Austin Novosad, the Baylor commit, has built a decent relationship with Cordell Russell through their visits to SMU camps. They've actually been at SMU a couple times together, so they've gotten to know each other a little bit. I expect him to take a visit to Baylor in March, but right now I would say probably Texas Tech is the favorite to land him. Now, as far as what led to his decommitment, I just think more recruiting momentum led to that. I think just seeing that other schools had interest in him, but it's definitely not just, Dallas Baker showed up and then he decided to decommit, nor is it, I don't think, a couple Tech guys are going to Tech. I think it was more just, hey, things are starting to open up a little bit. I want to explore my options a little bit more. But right now I would say Tech is probably the early favorite. I think he needs to get to know Baylor a little bit more before I move Baylor into the favorite spot.
Yeah, and apologies for not knowing that. I saw decommitment. I'm like, who did they have that was decommitted the name Cordell Russell? I thought he was referring to a Baylor commit. That's why I was confused. I was like, who is that? But yeah, I mean, what do you think? Joey and them are obviously building off the hype. They have not played a single down yet. And I'm not even like Joe. I mean, just saying, like, they haven't played it down. So that obviously is going to either just carry it even further in that direction, or it's going to like maybe pause it a little bit. But what do you think of what they're doing out there right now in Lubbock in terms of the recruiting and all of that, how it affects Baylor, how it doesn't, and just kind of the landscape of the Big 12?
Yeah, I mean, they're doing a good job. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, they're recruiting well. They're landing commits. They're doing a great job at getting guys to commit. Now, there's a difference between getting guys to commit and getting guys to sign. So we'll see how this all shakes out. I know they have a lot of momentum right now. I don't necessarily love all their commits. I feel like they're taking some guys that I don't necessarily think had much Baylor interest in some cases. I'm not a huge believer in their quarterback commit in the 2023 class to the same extent as others. Like, I think Austin Novosad is much better than Jake Strong. I think Jackson Arnold is much better than Jake Strong. And I think there's a tier gap between those two compared to the rest. And then Jake Strong. And then there's really no other quarterbacks in the state that we're talking about. So they probably got third best quarterback in the state. But overall, I just think the bigger thing is, will they sign these guys? Will they continue to carry that momentum based off how they do during the season? Or will it be another 5-7, 4-8, 6-6 type year? And then Baylor's going out and winning, 11 games, 10 games. And then Baylor's able to figure out, hey, that guy had a breakout senior year. He's committed to Tech. Let's go take him from Tech. And that's like you're comparing an 11-win season versus 5 or 6-win season. That could very well happen as well. So lots of work left to do. But hey, I will give them credit right now. They've definitely done some really good things. They're landing commits and they're trying to build some momentum and people to talk about them. And that's exactly what's happening.
And it's very reminiscent of Matt Rule 4 years ago. It's what it reminds me a lot of in terms of just the buildup and the belief and the getting people excited and all of that. Meanwhile, Baylor has Dave Miranda.
Yeah.
Now, let's see, Bear Coog, not a question, but I just want to give a big shout out to Kaylin Bickle. I feel like her mentality and presence in the paint really gives this team a lot of energy.
She's got to have that. She's basically their only bench player.
Yeah.
It feels like.
I was going to say, somebody's got to do it. And also I love her personality. I think she is like really fun and bubbly, like what, little I see. So definitely shout out to Caitlin Bickle. Thamba played great against Texas, but man, I feel like he's the number one guy for illegal moving screens. What does he need to do to get better in this area? Seems like he will get 1 to 2 a game. This will be crucial as we need him out of foul trouble in the games down the stretch.
He's getting there too late. That's how most of them happen. And honestly, that's how most of them occur is one of two ways. The defender really, really plays hard on the play, like gets to the spot before the offensive player. And that's a great defensive play. So a lot of times you'll see that. But then other times Flo's just not getting there quick enough. And I mean, that's a part of his game that it is what it is, right? He's not the fastest, not the most athletic guy. So if he's there late, then he ends up fouling guys. And I've seen that a couple times, seen him lean in a couple times, see him not getting set because he's not in position quick enough. Really, I just think they're going to have to be more selective with how they use him on screens. Because again, you don't want to give up 2 offensive fouls a game when you're going to need Flo to provide rim protection and likely foul a couple times as is just being a rim protector. So they're going to have to give and take a little bit in that situation. And I'm very intrigued to see how Jeremy Sohan is as a pick and roll guy. He's going to have to really improve on that throughout the rest of the year because they're going to need to use him that way.
Baylor 1, 2, 3. How will men's baseball do this year?
I think they'll do okay. Like, I think they're going to have a solid year. I think we talked about this earlier. I think I predicted them to finish, I believe, 4th in the Big 12. I think that sounds about right. It's Texas, Oklahoma State, and Tech. And then I think Baylor can slide in right there along with TCU. I think that's your top 5 in the conference. And I think Baylor can have a really solid year, but it's just, can they be consistent and can they avoid injuries? Because it feels like every year they have 1 or 2 really significant injuries at bad times that just leads them to kind of fall into really bad losing streaks in which they kind of lose momentum. We saw them lose momentum right before the NCAA tournament one year in which they had just an outstanding year, and then they fell into that Texas Tech trap, if you remember, where they just got destroyed, and then they went to Oklahoma State and got demolished, and then it just all snowballed at the end of the year. So just avoiding those injuries and remaining consistent at the end of the year, I think will help. But yeah, right now I got them finishing 4th in the Big 12, which I think will give them probably a 2 seed in a regional.
Yeah, I don't know much about the team this year. Need to kind of get, as we draw closer to kind of get in the swing of things, need to probably read up a little bit on it. Talking about a sport affected by COVID, in particular, just kind of made things sort of weird. And I like Steve Rodriguez. We'll see what the Bears can do this year, but they're definitely not the favorites in this conference when you got teams like Tech and TCU and Texas who are all consistently doing what they're doing every year. Ryan Allen Long, what do you think are the coach's main objectives for spring practice this year? What do you want to see out of spring practice?
Man, main objectives, huh? I think the biggest thing is kind of developing those young guys and trying to figure out who can be guys that can step up into positions that have been, lost by guys that are leaving to the NFL draft. So, there's a lot of positions that are going to be opening up on this offense and defense, mainly the defensive side. But if you look at wide receivers, like they need those guys to step up. So Dallas Baker is going to have to figure out who best fits the scheme after losing Drew Estrada, Tyquan Thornton, and RJ Sneed. So lots of work to do there. Offensive line's pretty cohesive. They're only trying to fill one spot there. So just figuring out what you have with those young guys up front, I think is going to be a key for the offensive line. On the defensive side, it's really trying to figure out, who's going to be the cornerbacks for this team, who's going to replace JT Woods, and then trying to figure out who's going to replace Terrell Bernard. And outside of that, I think it's really just about, again, building those young guys up. Who's going to be the running back to replace Abram Smith? All these things probably won't have a solidified answer by the end of spring, but they should have some idea of what they need to do roster construction-wise going into the fall, and also give them an idea of what they need to address in the transfer portal. So it's big. I mean, spring ball is massive to see who's improving, who's not, what areas do you need to address, and where you need to get better.
Yep, there will be a lot to talk about during spring ball. There's no doubt about that. Let's see here. Going to Alpha Needle, who will close us out this week. I'm really curious about spring ball. I didn't see is Shapen doing anything. Is he still injured?
I saw him with doing some training stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's fully cleared or whatnot. I'm curious who's going to, I know no one wants to hear this, but I'm curious who wins the quarterback battle. I know, everyone pretty much assumes it'll be Gary, and I probably side on the side that it might be.
Wait, what? Everybody assumes that?
Yeah, that he'll start.
Not me.
You don't think he'll start game one?
Not necessarily.
You don't think he will?
Okay. Not necessarily.
I don't think he's the better quarterback, but I think he'll start.
So what
game
are we
one.
doing?
I know, but that doesn't always happen.
If we're really going to go in the season and be like, I know he's not the best quarterback, but he's still the starter, then what the hell are we doing?
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's...
You know what I mean, though?
I do get what you're saying, and I do think it's an interesting question to have, but I also think they need both those guys on the roster.
Oh, for sure.
That's an issue, right?
Gary's only got so much time left. He can't carve out another
2 more years.
Well, you know what? Let's face it. Love Gary. Think he's great. Think he can win a lot of games. But I also am a realist. And, on paper, the better quarterback, unless Gary shows some dramatically improved, just boost in areas that have not really seemed to have improved all that much, then sure, he could. But, ultimately, you're playing the best player.
Yeah.
And I think the best player is going to be Shapen.
I agree. I don't think Gary could have done what Shapen did in the Big 12 championship. What he did in that first half.
No, I think he was throwing a couple picks.
Probably.
Yeah.
And so, we're on the same page with that. I just don't know that in the first game of the year that you're going to see Blake Shapen start. And I know it's about playing the best player, but sometimes that just doesn't happen. And sometimes you just think of it more like, hey, I think Gary can bring this to the table. I think we can win games, and we'll wait to see if something happens and Gary messes up, and then maybe Shapen comes in. I just don't know if it'll be answered after spring ball. I think it may drag into the fall.
Oh, no. As far as that, I doubt that they name a starter after spring ball. I highly doubt that. I think we'll probably be going into fall camp wondering who it is still, but I'm banking on Shapen. And I'm doing that just based not off injuries and all of that. I'm just saying who I think could be the best quarterback to make this team as elite as they can be. I think it's Blake Shapen.
I do too.
So that's where I'm at. But yeah, I understand your scenario as well. So we will see how all that goes. And spring ball's not going to settle that either. That's the thing. So get used to that conversation.
Sadly.
Yeah.
Again.
Alpha Needle. Yeah, again. Alpha Needle, buy or sell to close it out here. Jeff Grimes is on staff in 2023.
Sell. He's going to take a job.
I'll sell that.
They're going to have a great year this year offensively, and I think he's due, right? He's going to be due for a coaching job after this year, I think.
Yeah. Baylor baseball gets a regional bid in the College World Series.
So to me, a regional bid is just making the NCAA tournament, right? Or is this getting out of a super regional and making the College World Series?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, I'll answer both. How about that? I think Baylor will make a regional as a 2 seed. I don't think they will get out of that regional. As we've seen, Coach Rod and this team, they've struggled to get out of regionals, and I just think they'll probably get placed in really tough regional again, and then I don't know that they'll make it out of that, which means, no, I do not believe they will be in the College World Series this year.
Yeah, I definitely am going to say, no, I do not think that they will make it to the College World Series. Do they get a regional bid? Like, will they host a regional, if that's the question?
Regional bid, I just was thinking make a regional in general.
All right.
So make postseason play.
Yeah.
But I don't think they'll host a regional. I don't think they're going to be a 1 seed.
No. Yeah, I mean, I would hope they get in the postseason. I mean, at this point, that should be like almost an automatic, I feel like.
They didn't make it last year.
I know. Yeah. I'm saying I feel like at this point, this should be pretty much an automatic that you're going to be in there almost every year, at least getting to the postseason. So, I would expect them to get to the postseason, but as far as like hosting and doing all that, no, I don't expect that. And then the final one, JTT returns to Baylor basketball next year, buy or sell?
Yeah, buy. 100% buy. It's going to be his time next year to really take over the full load because Flo's going to be gone. And I think he will definitely be back, and Baylor needs him to be back because he's a difference maker for this team.
Yep, so that'll do it. Those are the questions for this week, and I'm sure that mailbag will get a bit fuller as we draw closer here a month away now, basically, from the start of spring practices, and 6 weeks from the pro day, and a couple months from spring game and all of that. So we've got some dates. We've got Miranda's contract finalized, and we've got a lot of positive wishes being sent the way of Jonathan Chamwa-Chachua. Thanks to Scotty, Stat Boy, Bear Coog, and also Baylor 123, Ryan, and Alpha Needle for your questions this week. Grayson, anything before we wrap it up here?
No, just excited. I mean, the trajectory continues to move positively in the right direction for Baylor going into next season. This football season could be a really, really special one, and I know the expectations are going to be really high, and as they should be. So, congrats to Dave Miranda. Congrats to Mac Rhodes on getting this job done. Prayers for Everyday John. Excited to see how baseball does this weekend. But, if you're interested in following all those things, along with recruiting and everything else, I encourage you to join the Sic'Em 365 Premium side. If you're a student, you get free access. Colt's been really marketing that over the past couple of weeks, so that's really cool. So if you are a student, you've been listening to the Bearcast, you like the news and information we provide, definitely check out the premium side. And of course, 365 Sports Radio every single day from 3 to 6. Be sure to check that out as well.
And I know I just said that I would pick Blake Shapen as a starting quarterback, but that does not mean anything personally towards Gary Bohannon. Right. And Gary Bohannon actually a part of the promos for the website and getting involved and doing a little NIL stuff with the website. So definitely check that out. Take advantage of all the different ways that's going to be utilized, and definitely take advantage of premium opportunities as they come and go to join up and be a member and get in on the conversation with a lot of other Baylor fans without having to worry about being attacked on Twitter by some rando UT fan who wants to chime in. You can avoid that. People are like, why? Well, what's the like? Hey, you get a little bit of privacy. Doesn't mean a Baylor fan's not going to attack you for something stupid you might say, but at least it's a Baylor fan and not somebody wishing your death basically from some other fan base. But there's all sorts of premium opportunities. A lot of discussion going on right now about Dave Miranda's extension and recruiting, and now spring ball and the draft and basketball and baseball. Just so much stuff going on. So definitely take advantage of opportunity to join up a Sic'Em 365 premium section. We're going to get on out of here. Thanks to Jack and Armstrong behind the scenes as well. Thanks to Grayson, and thanks to you sitting back and listening wherever you are, and however long you are listening. We do appreciate it, and thanks for the support. We will talk to you next week. I'm Craig Smoke. This has been the Bearcast on Sic'Em365.com.